and sign with the Mavericks as an assistant coach would hinder LeBron's chances at another ring. Plaschke described Dudley as the, quote, last guy on the bench, but the strongest voice in the locker room. On a veteran team of desperate personalities, he was the glue. Amid a laborious season filled with lulls, he was their muse. Shannon, on a scale of 1 to 10, how big of a loss, and be honest here, is Jared Dudley?
I'm going to say something like a 3 or 4.
3 or 4?
Yeah.
You disagree with LeBron James?
No, I mean, Skip, look, I understand, but I don't think that's going to have an impact. Sometimes, Skip, front office people, they only can see your value on the court. How many points you score, how many rebounds, how many assists you got. But sometimes the locker room presence. And I get that Jared Dudley was not the guy that filled the stat sheet. He was a locker room presence. LeBron believed in him. AD believed in him. Oh, I guess LeBron isn't running the Lakers. You remember, you've been peddling that for the longest time. LeBron's running the Lakers. LeBron running the Lakers. Now, it's been reported that LeBron wanted him. AD wanted him. So I guess they're not running the Lakers after all.
Well, I'm going to question you about that as soon as you hand the ball back to me.
Well, I ain't had the ball to you just yet. Skip, and I do believe Dudley wanted to return. I believe if the Lakers wanted him to return, Skip, they could have found a role for him. Hey, why can't he be on the staff at the Lakers? He don't have to be on the front row. He could be on the back row.
Great question.
But he could have still been in the locker room.
Okay.
But like I said, I think once training camp rolls around and the season starts, the guys understand there's a task at hand. There's something that needs to be accomplished. And sure, I'm sure all those guys would have loved Duds to still remain there. That's not the case, but you still got to go do your job. I remember, Skip, when I left, and Mike told me once I got back, he said, 84, I didn't realize what a locker room presence. A lot of things that you took care of and a lot of the veteran guys took care of, all of a sudden I found myself leaking out on the practice field. It ended up getting on my desk.
So you were the Jared Dudley of the Denver Broncos, right?
I was the senior statesman, Skip. I handled a lot of things.
Except you actually played, right?
I did play, Skip. But also a part of my role was not only to play and make plays, Skip. I also, because I was a senior statesman, had been in the locker room and understand the dynamics of a locker room and the personalities of a locker room. And so a lot of that, a lot of things that you try to take care of so it doesn't become a bigger issue and something Mike needs to deal with. Okay. So I felt that was my role.
Why was LeBron so devastated in the 2 tweets that he posted midweek this week?
Because I think he voiced that he wanted Dudley. And I think he voiced like, look, guy, I get it. He's not giving us 12 a night. He's not giving us 5 rebounds. He's not giving us 4 assists. But some things you can't measure what he does provide.
As LeBron said, for many reasons you would not understand.
Yes. Okay. And I believe that's what he's talking about.
Okay, so back to Bill Plaschke. I've known Bill for God knows how many years, and I have nothing but the highest regard for him. He is a great writer. He is knowledgeable, he is plugged in, and he is insightful. Yet, when I first glanced at this headline last night, Lakers' failure to retain Jared Dudley is crazy and a huge blow to a title run. When I read that, I thought it was a parody piece. I thought it was going to be dripping with sarcasm that he would be making fun of LeBron for making such a big deal of a guy who barely played for the Lakers. That's what I thought.
Yes.
And as I read, it was quite the opposite. Bill Plaschke writes, he was the last guy on the bench, but the strongest voice in the locker room. Silly me, I thought that would be one LeBron James.
But he was a guy, Skip, that when things weren't going well, he could tell LeBron, nah, bro, that's not right. That's not what we had talked about. AD, I need you to do this. Remember, we had talked about switching this. You were supposed to take that. He was the guy, Skip. You need that guy in the locker room. Because how many guys that you think in that locker room is going to come to LeBron and say, LeBron, you were wrong in this situation? How many guys going to be able to go to AD? Sometimes it needs to be someone other than the 2 superstars that's able to correct the superstars.
It made me sit back last night and think, did Michael Jordan need like a conscience in the locker room? There's nobody who ever said a word to Michael Jordan because he did it.
Okay, so what was Phil Jackson?
LeBron needed a sounding board.
What was Phil Jackson?
Well, whatever. So you're telling me Frank Vogel is chopped?
It's Phil Jackson.
Okay, well.
Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I don't know. Did Jared Dudley tell LeBron you're out of line here? I
believe he did, yes. I believe he could. I believe he could. Skip, it's the same situation in Miami. Look at UD. Udonis Haslem. Udonis Haslam provide. Why is it different? Tell me
Because he
why.
was such a contributor on the floor. You have to be able to back it up on the floor before you can do it in the locker room.
But see, what did you say? As an English major, when you said he was, what would the yes?
But he did it once upon a time, and Jared Dudley never really did it. Most he ever averaged in this league was 13.
That's pretty good.
Really?
Skip, UD was an enforcer, but UD
he was seen as on-court heart and soul of that team.
Yes.
Right?
But Duds was a good player, Skip. Was he a great player? No. But like I said, sometimes it's more than points, rebounds, and assists.
Okay, so now to the scenario of what just unfolded. The tweets indicate that LeBron got blindsided by this, like he did not see this coming because he tweeted, if this is true, like I don't even know if this is true or not. So back to your point. LeBron James is by far the most important Los Angeles Laker.
Yeah.
He is the face of the franchise and the face of the NBA. So clearly, if this were unfolding, the first thing that would happen would be Jared Dudley would pick up his cell phone and call LeBron or text him and say, hey, they don't want me back. And guess what? I got an opportunity to be an assistant coach on the front row with J. Kidd in Dallas.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So at that point, LeBron would call Pelinka and say, hey, we can make this happen.
Right.
Let's make him an assistant on the Lakers. Because that's basically what he was an assistant coach because he barely played.
Right.
He played a grand total of 81 minutes the whole year last year, right? Okay, did that happen? I don't know if it happened. And furthermore, you can now have 15 players on a roster. Well, why couldn't he be the 15th player making the veterans minimum?
Right.
Okay, 13 dress. Well, given his role, he doesn't even need to dress because I got to tell you, and I know Jared pretty well, he never kept himself in the greatest shape because he barely played, right? And he looked more and more.
No, he was in tip-top shape. That's just what he looked like.
Okay, but he looked more and more as he aged like some guy in a headband you'd see at the Y at noontime trying to get in a game.
I used to see him all the time at Equinox in there hooping.
All right.
And he just looked like that guy. And that's the mistake a lot of people like, oh, man, Jared Dudley, I see him going at him online. Bruh, that's a professional, that's an NBA player.
He is.
Ain't no average Joe just gonna beat him.
Okay, I got it. So why wouldn't, if he's essential to a title run, why wouldn't Rob Pelinka or even Jeannie Buss say, hey, we got to find a spot because it's easy to find a spot for a guy who doesn't play.
It's the same thing with Tom Brady. Why would Coach Belichick let this man go? He's essential to a title run.
Okay, well, you just compared Jared Dudley to Tom Brady.
Skip, what we think and what the locker room thinks is not sometimes what the front office thinks. No, I'm not comparing Jared Dudley, no Tom Brady, but I'm saying how the front office view a player as opposed to how he's viewed in the locker room is something entirely different. Okay. That's all I'm saying. No, there is no comparison.
Okay, and to your point, here's a line from Plaschke talking about Kyle Kuzma was asked on Twitter to cite his greatest teammate ever, and he responded, duds, and it's not even close.
Right.
What does that say for LeBron?
Yeah.
You wouldn't say LeBron James is my greatest teammate?
What you mean greatest? You mean the greatest player he's ever played with? That's a no-brainer. But Skip, just because
teammate.
Hold on. So let me so I just want to make sure I'm hearing you correct. So every player that's ever played with Tom Brady, when they say, well, who's my greatest teammate? You believe they're going to say Tom Brady?
Well, I think
No, it's got to be 100%. Because why else would they say someone else if it's not Tom Brady? That's the thing, Skip. You can't do that. You can't. See, you quick to deduce. Well, if LeBron James, no. John Elway wasn't my greatest teammate, and that's okay.
In this sport, only 5 can play at once, and grand total of 13 are on the roster.
Greatest teammate is
as
something.
Opposed to 53 players, and Tom Brady's played 20 years.
Skip, being the greatest player doesn't mean the greatest player that you've played with. There are other things that go into doing this, being a great teammate. You just think it has to be whomever the best player is, that's got to be my best teammate. That's not the case.
Okay, this is the easiest political battle LeBron could ever try to win. It's just easy. Call Jeannie and just say, hey, find a place for him. It's as simple as that.
But that's what you always said. So you say LeBron's running the Lakers. Well, Jared Dudley's not there. Now all of a sudden he's not running the Lakers.
Well, is this tweet just for show? Is it for real?
What you mean?
About the devastation that he's displaying.
I'm sure he is. But I don't believe, Skip, you ask me, the level of concern as far as going to winning a championship. I don't believe it's going to have the impact that Bill Plaschke believes that it's going to have. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not a significant loss or it's an important loss. I just don't believe.
You are disagreeing publicly with your man LeBron James, and this is another time that you've done that. You are. He's devastated publicly. So I thought you would go to an 8 or a 9 on the degree of loss.
Okay, Skip. But the headline says this could be a blow to their title run. I don't believe it's going to be a blow to their title run. Do I believe LeBron is disappointed? I do. Do I believe he's upset? I do. Do I believe the organization, they based this solely on what doesn't give us points, rebounds, and assists, and didn't see any value inside the locker room? There's another reason why, Skip. They're never in the locker room. Kurt Rambis is not in the locker room. Rob Pelinka is not in the locker room. Jeannie Buss is not in the locker room, and that's okay.
Maybe Kurt Rambis would be occasionally.
Occasionally.
Just because he played and he would be more accepted.
But Mike didn't know the locker room. The coaches didn't know. Mr. B didn't know the locker room like I did.